Guys, it's Mark from High Strung Audio. Today we're going to be looking at the Neo IDSD from IFI Audio. This is a DAC preamp headphone amp, and it deserves mention. It really is a high performance device. It's available online for $799.99. Has dozens of reviews on YouTube, and honestly, I found a lot of the reviews pretty boring, very vague, very general. Didn't really get into the nitty gritty on what this is and how to make it sound its best. You can't just buy an audio component and throw it in the system and expect to have the best results. You have to know what you're doing. You have to understand the product you're reviewing, and you really have to let the customer know in detail how to make this thing really sound good. And it is good, but we're gonna tell you and illustrate to you what needs to be done to make it sound as good as it can. So the first thing that nobody really talks about is break-in. Before break-in, this thing sounds like a $200 DAC, and that is no exaggeration. This needs about 120 hours of break-in, and one of the things that comes with it that people don't realize is an upgrade is the IFI iPower switching power supply. This is definitely a much better sounding switching power supply than a standard. The only caveat is, just like the unit needs break-in, this needs break-in, and this probably also needs about 120 hours of break-in. When comparing this with a regular wall wart, the wall wart will sound better than this when this is new. After this breaks in, that's when you see the sonic benefits, and it is something that I can tell. I've broken a few of these in. I've used them on a few devices that I have. I bought them as upgrades. This is included with the Neo IDSD, which is a great bonus, and it's because IFI makes it, so they include it with their Neo. And I consider it to be a really nice upgrade, and it does improve the sound quality. If anybody doesn't believe me, they can buy a regular wall wart and go back and forth and compare it. This is gonna make the music sound much more clear, more dynamic, and all the benefits you get with less noise. So that's gonna be the first thing you have to know. You do need break-in for this unit. It does. A lot of people on some of the reviews were complaining that the bass is very thin, and we're going to address that issue in this video. So the bass will sound very thin when it's breaking in, and it does flesh out and get deeper and much more satisfying as you do break it in. Another thing that will enhance your bass is if you put a pre-90 in the signal path, it's going to increase your bass, your punchiness on the low end, and it's also going to make the highs just pristine. It cleans up everything. It enhances both ends of the frequency response, just like all the other DACs that we use this with. So it's a very nice addition to the Neo IDSD. The way that I used my Neo was that I used the balanced outputs into my amplifier, and I did also notice it does sound a lot better. It's more dynamic. It sounded like the soundstage was pushed forward a little bit more, and overall it does sound better using the balanced outs. The other thing I wanted to address is the USB cable is very important it's very important to which one you use. I have 3 cables that I use in general, and it depends on my unit that I'm using. They all have a distinct sound. The first one is a Cardis Clear. It's pure oxygen-free copper, nothing special, but it's really good. Then you have the Matrix Audio, their $100 USB cable. I think they only make one of them. This one is too open. It sounds too revealing, and it just is not a good match for the Neo. And then you have the Audioquest Carbon. This has a low % of silver in it. Again, it's not going to be the best match for the Neo. And what I found to be the best match, and significantly, was the Cardis Clear. I found the bass, I found the mid-range, the upper extension, the highs. They were all perfectly balanced. It is a significant upgrade if you can buy the Cardis Clear to the sound quality. So that is definitely something you want to make note of. The USB cable is important. And that brings us to the Bluetooth. This thing does have Bluetooth 5.0. It will remember several devices, and the range is fantastic on it. The only thing is, obviously, it's not going to sound as good as USB because there is some compression when using Bluetooth, so you're not going to get the full audio experience. But it is, for convenience, just so you know, every time I tried it, it worked. It's reliable without any glitching. The unit comes with a little remote It's a tiny remote, it has good range, works well, and I found it to be useful. Very nice remote, and like IFI products, everything usually works very reliable, and they perform a little bit better than average. So you're gonna get a good performance out of that remote. And let's talk about the final upgrade in sound quality, which is if you use an S-Booster linear power supply. This is where you transform your Neo into something really special. It really thickens up the sound. It does add a little bit of bass on the bottom end. Instrument separation is really why you buy this. That is the ultimate upgrade in sound quality. Is, you know, when you're really cleaning up that signal path, instrument separation starts to creep in and you get more depth, more layering, and it is definitely worth a $300 investment if you want to upgrade any audio component actually, but it really works well in the Neo IDSD. As far as the headphone amp section, I have to tell you that I was very, very surprised about this, actually blown away. And I'll explain to you what made me so excited about this and blown away. The Sennheiser HD600s, to be quite honest, they sound dull with, I mean, the majority of headphone amps out there, especially when they include one in a DAC. It's usually an afterthought, and it's something that's always mediocre. I'm here to report that the headphone amp section, and I'm talking about only the balance, the regular one is mediocre. It doesn't really put out enough power. Unless you're running a very low ohm headphone or very efficient headphone, you want to stick to the balance port, which is what I use for the HD600s. The balance output puts out about 1 watt. On these, it's probably going to put out a fraction of that, but what I was really surprised with is it powered them, and it powered them well. Usually, you know, you need something like a crack. What is it? The crack audio has a headphone amp, a tube headphone amp that has a lot of current that drives these well. The Vioelectric V550 that we reviewed, that has a lot of current that drives these well. But for some strange reason, when using the balance port, the HD600s on this, on the Neo IDSD is absolutely phenomenal. I would say that it's right up there with the V550 in sound quality. It really makes the drivers move. It sounds very dynamic. It has really good bass extension. It sounds like a proper, headphone, and it sounds very good. I would rate it like one of the best pairings, and it's a shocker because this is one of the headphones that just makes every headphone amp cry, and it always sounds dull and uninspiring, and with this it just sounds perfect. And what makes it just more interesting, I'll explain, is usually, like I said, it sounds very thin and sometimes maybe a little boring. On this headphone amp with the HD600, so the highs, because it is a burr brown chip and it's open, you get all that openness and all the highs in there. And then when using the balance port, you're gonna get all that bass. So it's a full, complete sound out of the HD600s. I was very surprised in how good these sound. So if you have a pair of these, I highly recommend the Neo IDSD. The second pairing that I absolutely loved was the IFI Man Ananda. These are a low impedance headphones, so they're easier to drive than the Sennheisers. So you can get away with using the regular port, but obviously if you use the balance port, you're gonna get a lot more dynamic and just a better response. These sound sublime. I would use that word sublime, and to the point where it's almost addicting. That's how good these sound. Addicting sound signature. Really, really amazing. So I was really blown away by the headphone section on this DAC. As far as MQA files playing through the Neo, I did it through Tidal, and there is definitely a sound quality increase when you use MQA files. It's very reliable, it does work well, and I do recommend, if you can stream in MQA, I definitely recommend that because it does sound better than a regular audio file. So I wanted to talk about the main feature of the Neo IDSD, which is the DAC chip. It's a burr brown made by Texas Instruments, and the burr brown chips are some of my favorite. I find myself loving every unit that has that chip in it. I just find loving the sound signature. So what does it sound like? Well, when you compare it to a chip like AKM, it's exponentially more revealing, especially on the high end and the mid-range. AKM chips sound pushed back, they sound veiled, and they do sound a little compressed. Even in the most expensive DACs that you can buy, they do have those detriments to their sound quality. The Burr Brown is the frequency response just seems so open and even. The high frequency response, the mid-range, the bass is not going to blow you away, but it is adequate. And especially if you're using the pre-90, but it is adequate. So overall, you get a really clear, pristine sound signature. And what's interesting is you definitely notice an increase in bass response when you use the headphone amp section, especially the balanced. That's what I noticed at least. So as far as a headphone amp, I think it excels, and it's definitely going to be better than anything that is included in an all-in-one unit. It's the best. I would even say it's better. It might even be a little bit better than Matrix Audio headphone amp section. But that is from memory, so I'm not 100% sure. But I do think that this is definitely going to be a little bit more open. You don't realize an AKM chip is veiled until you go back and forth and listen to other, DACs, and that's where I noticed it. I was going back and forth between a $1,200 unit that I have. It's a Gustard A22, and it definitely sounded more laid back. It pushed, the sound was definitely more veiled, not as open. The highs were not as extended. So if you like a crisp, open sound, you're gonna love the IFI Neo ID. Guys, that concludes the video review. Please leave a like below and subscribe to our channel if you have not already. And we would appreciate comments below. They always make it a lot more interesting if people comment below. I love everybody's input, good, bad, or indifferent, it doesn't matter. So yeah, just feel free to leave a comment below. If you guys ever have any questions regarding the unit and you're thinking about other units, you could ask me questions below. I don't always have time to answer them right away. Sometimes I do, but I can answer any question if you want to compare this to any other DAC preamp headphone amps. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great day.